Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 103 with Abraham Daniels. So Abe, as I call him, is one of my friends and that I'm so happy to have on the podcast. Anyone that's listening right now that is a friend of mine or even a close acquaintance and you're curious about being on the podcast and have a story to share, please come on. There's nothing stopping you. This is not a VIP type of podcast. I love talking to anyone and everyone about any ups and downs that they've had in their life. So always a pleasure to have someone I really know on this podcast. And obviously it was a pleasure to have Abe as a guest. So Abe Daniels is a self-proclaimed late bloomer and former extrovert. Abe was born and raised in the prairies, but recently moved to Toronto to further explore his career in the tech space. He completed his undergraduate at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon and recently completed a master's at Queen's University. Abe has a lovely girlfriend named Alia, a wonderful dog named Oslo, two beautiful sisters, and a pair of dedicated parents. And if that's not the most wholesome bio you've ever heard, I don't know what is. I loved reading this bio. So in 2016, Abe had three big ebbs, as we like to call it, when he lost his job, his girlfriend, and his apartment in all a 4-month span. And for anyone, going through one of those is hard enough, let alone all three. And I'm sure if you've ever went through something in your life where you feel like it's boom, 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 one thing after another, like when it rains, it pours, you know how that feels. So I had so much empathy talking to Abe about his story. And even though we are years later and we're talking a lot more about kind of the glow of his life now and how things have changed, it's hard not to bring yourself back right to the point of Abe's story. If you've ever, we've all been through breakups, if you've ever had to move or change cities, or if you've ever been laid off or fired from a job, the emotions that you go through when those things are going on, they're painful, as we know. So in today's episode, we talk about, like I said, we talk a lot about Abe changing career. So we talk about the embarrassment and the shame and the ego that was involved when you get fired from your job. And he was kind of blindsided that there was no performance reviews or any ideas that this was going to happen. So it really kind of knocks you off the pedestal that you put yourself on. And if anyone's been fired at like the beginning of their career, yeah, it can take all of the confidence out of you pretty quickly. So we then go through the episode just chatting about how Abe was navigating his career changes and figuring out his interests and his passions. And we talk about when he was fired, just kind of going right back living in his parents' basement after making lots of income and living on his own. And you kind of just feel like you're back at square one. But the nice thing about it is we talk a lot about the great things that are happening in Abe's life. So in the next couple of months, Abe is moving to Boston with his girlfriend to take a job with MIT to work in artificial intelligence. And he's doing that right now, but it's even a bigger research and strategy job that he's pretty excited for. And it's nice, I think, when you look back at kind of the pivots and the changes and the failures that you go through, and you kind of have so much gratitude when you look in the mirror and you realize where you are now, it makes all the crap that happened so worth it. So I know you are going to love this episode with Abe. Enjoy just the natural genuineness because Abe and I do know each other personally. We are friends. And yeah, I think you're going to gain a lot of value in today's episode. If you do, as I always say, make sure to share it with a friend who will gain value as well. All right, let's stop talking for a second and let's jump into this episode. So enjoy. Abe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. One correction. I do not live with my girlfriend, though.
Abe lives in Toronto. His girlfriend lives in Markham. They are moving to Boston together.
There we go.
I was going to say your place is too nice to not have a live-in girlfriend, but I know you well enough to know that you're probably the clean one.
So I'll be the first to admit she's very clean.
Good.
But it's not her fault that I'm the clean one. It's just my compulsiveness that makes me the clean one.
Honestly, it's not a bad quality. I dated a guy once that was an absolute mess in
Yeah.
terms of like home wise. And I don't care how many great qualities he ended up having. That's one I could not look over. It drove me
Yeah.
nuts.
I think my mom for that one, but yeah, it's definitely ingrained in me. Like from the second I get up, my bed's made within the first 30
Yes,
seconds to a minute
me
to
too.
when I go to bed, the house has to be clean before I actually hit the sack. So
The only time the house isn't clean before I go to bed is when I accidentally fall asleep on the couch. And then I'm just like, oh my God, let's just go to my actual bed. Deal with
yeah,
this in the morning. Or
exactly.
if it's a late Sunday night.
Mine is usually if I'm like in a frenzy. Like if you walk
Yeah.
into my place and it's not clean, it's like, okay, Abraham's. It's not even that I'm super busy. I'm just like I am on like I'm close to burnout.
Yes, I feel that.
Yeah.
And linking back to what I said about the guy that I dated for a little bit, I found, and this is what I find about a lot of people, is if they have generally like a messy room or a messy house, I, from my experience, feel like the rest of their life is disorganized.
Fair enough. Okay. I know some people that are very clean that are very disorganized in life, and then
Mhm.
vice versa. People that are very disorganized. It's almost like all their energy is put into like their job, and then
Mhm.
everything else kind of gets what's left, or
Yes.
vice versa, because their life is in order, their space is in order as like a compensation.
Well, I guess what does that say about people who can make both work? Their life is organized and their house is organized.
I mean, I'm not going to speak on anybody else's behalf, but for me, my life is organized when my house is. It's like one of those like the old proverb: "Take care of your house, and the rest will
Mhm.
come." Like it's kind of falls in line with that.
You're probably similar to me, especially with working from home. It's I can't start work until this house is tidy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I've there's been plenty of times where I've gotten up and I've done like I set up my desk and I've literally got up and like no, and I've done like a thorough deep clean of the house
Mhm.
and then went to work. Luckily, I can kind of pick up tasks when I need to, but
Mhm.
I'll even clean up after other people while they're at my place.
Oh, good God.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Can't do
not
it.
to the point where it's like annoying, but it'll just be, yeah. Even when I'm cooking, like if I'm cooking, I gotta clean before I gotta like I cook and clean
Of
so that
course.
when I finish eating, I don't have to go back and clean anything.
No.
Yeah.
We say that as if it's like a normal thing, but people are probably listening right now being like, these two people are maybe serial killers.
Nah, I mean, if I am, it means I'm getting away with it. So what's the
Yeah.
risk?
Okay. One thing I want to ask you right away that I found really interesting is when you described yourself as self proclaimed late bloomer and
Mhm.
former extrovert. What I gather from that is there's a lot of change that's happened. So,
Mm.
what does late bloomer mean? Late bloomer and what?
I guess late bloomer in terms of just like really finding out what interests me. Like
Okay.
I like I've had 4 different careers since university, and I only graduated 10 years ago. And I've like now fallen into like a career where I genuinely like enjoy it, and I see it
Mhm.
like a long-term future. And I've actually started to see some success out of that, some personal success and some like like
Just joy.
joy, yeah, personal success and like personal like fulfillment from it. There we
Yeah.
go, that's the better word. So and then that would drove me to going back to school to get my master's. So when I say a late bloomer, I mean in terms of I think sometimes on paper things may seem a little bit better than they are, where like I may be doing this or I may have this occupation, but if you look at everything 5 years, I wouldn't even go that far, I'd say 4 years before, the last 4 years is not indicative of the previous six. It's very much like its own bucket. And like that's what I mean in terms of late bloomer.
And former extrovert. At what point of your life did that change?
I don't
You still
know.
have a lot of extroverted qualities, but maybe like
I have
a
extroverted calls with people
slowed
I'm
down
comfortable with.
extrovert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm comfortable around you, I'm an extrovert, but like I don't necessarily like, for instance, like FOMO. Like
Yeah.
I have no concept of what that means anymore. Just because like before I would love to go out and see people, be seen, yada yada. And
Mhm.
now I would much rather love like sitting on the couch watching a movie, or like even if it's going out, like a chill drink.
Mhm.
And if I do go out, like if a friend invites me out and I know 2 people and there's like 8 people out there, unless it's like a setting where you're meeting people for the sake of like an event or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If it's just like going out to go out, I don't care about being like the life of the party or making an impression. It's just like we're just gonna kind of lay in the cut vibe out. And then when your juice is gone, you're just gonna go home.
You know, those two kind of link together. where there's a theme of like not needing to prove yourself anymore because you are starting to know who you are and what you like. You're not
Yeah.
searching for it anymore.
I think that's exactly it. Like that's, you kind of nailed it. It was as I've gotten more comfortable in my own skin. I've always been, I mean, what's the profanity clause on this podcast?
More than welcome.
Okay. So
encouraged.
I used to be like, I think really wrapped up in like, not what people thought about me, but like what they would say. So like if they thought I was an asshole, I genuinely didn't give a fuck, but I always wanted to kind of at least make some type of impression. Yeah. Now I could care less, to the degree where like it's like how I get made fun of, where it's like my girlfriend will ask me, hey, did you ask him? Like somebody will tell me something really interesting or new news, and then there'll be follow-up questions that, you know, are asked of me, and I'll be like, I don't know, I don't like
or care.
Yeah, it's like, if you want to tell me something, I'm more than happy for you to tell me, but like I'm not gonna pry for anything. Like this is your story to tell, and like you'll dictate how far you want to take it or not take it. Like I'm fine knowing either way.
Your girlfriend's gonna stop having you as a +1 for dinner parties.
No, I don't think so.
She's gonna be like, you're scaring away the guest.
No. It's not so much scaring. It's just like, you know, it's one of those things where you have a juicy piece of information and you just kind of like, it's like watching a movie where you're glued to it.
Yeah.
I just don't have that. I don't have that bone.
I find for me where like, obviously, you know me, I'm an extrovert person, but being an only child makes me a lot more on the introverted side in ways, but like still very like social. It's like almost a social introvert, but I would never describe myself as an introvert, just very okay with being alone. But where I'm going with that is I tend to say no to a lot of social outings now, but for the reason of I like to ask who's going or who's there. And if there's anyone there or that might be there that I just feel has like a negative aura, or like I just don't plan and don't want to spend any time or energy around, I'm willing to say no to the whole event. It doesn't happen often, but there's a couple people that like within my friend groups that like can be found. Like they're almost like secondary, tertiary friends, but sometimes they could come around into a group setting. And I'll ask like, oh, like, do you think that person's gonna be there? Because I just feel like they drain my energy. And I'm like, I would rather be alone and have absolutely zero FOMO than waste any time being around that person.
I can't say I've ever done that, only because I get when somebody asks me who's going to be there, my immediate reaction is like, why does it matter?
I will say there's only like a couple people. But I've said no to events.
I totally understand where you're coming from. It's like it's like energy exchange wherever you go. I guess kind of to the earlier point where it's like I'm so indifferent in terms of that. Like I don't really absorb a lot of other people's energy for whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So I'm not really concerned about whether someone's going to be there or not going to be there. If I do ask, it's more from the perspective of
what's the vibe?
Like, yeah, exactly. Like what should I expect, just so I can come into the right mental state. But I have had friends where it's just like, yeah, you know, I don't want to go if this person's there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, my perception is just like, you know what, like I mean, you almost like I guarantee you, for me, it's like a point of pride where it's like, look, no one's going to dictate how or what I feel. Therefore, if I don't know someone's there that I don't like them, I'll just be like, all right, let's do it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm not going to get mad. So they're just going to get pissed off and then I can go home. So, but I totally get where you're coming from.
No, I have growing to do. Trust me. Yeah. I have growing to do in terms of not being affected by certain energies.
It's tough though. You know, how do you
putting up that shield a bit?
Which is a tough thing though, because like in I guess putting up that shield is, you know, how do you pull it down and all that good stuff, you know? But it's just
working on it.
Yeah. Hey, look, man, we all are.
Oh my goodness.
We all are.
The biggest thing I want to start our conversation with today is the big three that you went through in 2016. And I say big three because I swear to God, problems in our life, and they often come in threes. Like it's a well-known thing. Like people always say, like, if there's a death, it usually comes in threes, which is so morbid. But when I was reading what you want to talk about and kind of our big topics, I was like, three things, all boom, 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 dominoed. I was like, I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah.
And for context for the audience, so basically in 2016, Abe went through losing his job, losing his girlfriend, and his apartment all in a 4-month span.
Yeah. Fun.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's well, it sucked. I mean, I think point blank. I think the hardest of all three, as bad as it sounds, was probably losing my job.
Of course, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
Why did you say that as if it's going to be surprising?
I don't know. I think just like the human aspect of like you and your girlfriend breaking up feels like it should be the worst, you know? And
You're
if
not talking to the right person.
fair enough. To all the listeners out there, though, don't judge me.
It's everyone else except us. We're like, yep, the job is the hardest one to lose.
Well, I think it was the best thing because I identified with my job, like not the job itself, but like it was in Saskatoon, a small city, obviously, and the company I worked for was pretty. I mean, it was a smaller company in total, but like I think in Saskatoon and in the space that they worked in, they're relatively known. And I was doing really well. Like I was 25, 26 years old, making again $125,000, $130,000
A lot
a
of
year
money at
for
that
that.
age.
And in
And
the
in
city,
Saskatoon.
yeah, and in Saskatoon. So, you know, you just life was really, really good. And I was in the height of my, 25-year-old, idiocy. So I just, I was ego like a maniac. So it was just one of those things where I got wrapped up in what the money let me do, and yada yada yada. It made me feel like I was, better than I really was, and I definitely had a complex. Probably still do have a complex, and losing that, and I guess the way I lost it too was
what in order was it? Job, girlfriend,
it was
apartment?
the job, apartment, girlfriend. Yeah.
Any correlations between them? Like is one happening because of the other, or?
I would say the apartment had no correlation. It was just there was a company based in Vancouver that bought all of they came in Saskatoon. They're doing a sweep of buying a bunch of property, gutting it, and I was just one of the people that lived in the building. I would say
no fault of your own, just kind
no,
of
yeah,
add
exactly.
to the pile.
Yeah, the girlfriend, I would say there was definitely, I think like me not working. I don't know if it put a strain on her. Like I'm not gonna read her mind, but I'm sure like in any relationship, if your partners like you're used to them being working, all of a sudden they're not, like, from like she didn't have to support me financially whatsoever, but just I'm sure there was just like a taste in your mouth. I want my partner to be working. I want them to be some form of like member of society.
Especially if you're the type that identifies with that, your whole demeanor is changing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I wasn't great being around. Yeah, and then because I lost my apartment, I moved in with my girlfriend, which was like a shotgun decision. And even that was a little bit tumultuous. Like it wasn't like right off the bat, like there was some humming and hawing. So I think all that definitely didn't help the relationship. And I wasn't in a good head state. So I can be the first to admit I probably wasn't a good boyfriend at that point in time,
I've went through great times in my life and been a terrible girlfriend. So yeah. I'm sure going through things that really affect your life and your personal life, of course, you're not expected to be the best partner.
Yeah, but I think like you don't have to be a good partner, but you can at least communicate.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not a good partner and you're not communicating, then you're
pretty avoidant.
You're just being a big dick. And that I think like being 34 years old now, I can kind of like, wear a little bit more of the blame that I initially accepted. But yeah, it was tough. Like I said, the work, the identity piece, just like I went from, again, making what I was and kind of having that persona to all of it being gone. And I felt that I was blindsided.
Okay.
Yeah, like I didn't see, like there was no like conversations about
no performance reviews
or anything like that. I mean, again, now that I'm 34 in hindsight, I can see that there was things happen at work that like, definitely, I wouldn't say have writing on the wall, but like I should have picked up. But I also like now I'm in a position where I'm,
you could fire people and you would never go about it that way.
Well, I couldn't say that I could. I'm not at this, my new organization definitely couldn't fire people, but I definitely I have a heavy hand in like how certain people's like, performance and trajectory goes.
Yeah.
And the way I would go about it, the way I have in the past is like, you have very candid conversations about where they're at, where they need to be, and what's the impact if they don't. And that wasn't there. And I think for me, it was just one of those things where it was a person at the time that I really respected. And for it to happen, it was just like, I think that hurt a lot. So that carried into obviously the act happening. So if it was for me, it was just like, I don't see how you could, like, if you're going to do it, I get it. Like business is business, but the way it happened and like,
well, give me some details.
Well, I got called in on a Sunday.
A Sunday? Did you normally work Sundays?
No. I got called in to drive into the office on a Sunday, and
like nothing good could be coming out of this.
Yeah, so of course I'm on edge the entire time.
Of course.
And you sit down, you wonder what's going on, and it happens. And then the whole time I was just like, obviously in my mind, I'm like, why would you call me in on a Sunday?
Fire
to
me
drive
Monday
into
morning.
the office. And the second thing was, of course, like, why wouldn't we lay out that like this was a potential thing that is going to happen, or like this is what, like, I just wish that occurred. With all that being said, in hindsight, it was the greatest thing to happen. So I can't be mad. But at that point in time, between that and then immediately after losing, my apartment, then immediately after breaking up with my girlfriend at the time, like it was just, and then moving back home to live in my parents' basement, it was obviously one of those things.
After making all that money and living the greatest life, and you're like, now I'm back at square one.
I should
-1.
say, like, I was on EI, which was, because of what I was making, my EI was substantial. So
I'm living a poor life, but not as poor as some people.
yeah. So like it was never like, it was truly never about the money in terms of like not having enough. It was just more so about like the identity wrapped in something that you no longer have, therefore the identity is gone. And then again, I had this like, there was this almost like, you're gonna do something, like you're obviously gonna have either career-wise, you're gonna do something really really cool, and then all of a sudden, 27 years old, I'm living in my parents' basement, back in the city that you moved out of because you left when you were 19. So there's just all that shit going around in your head. And I spent like 6 months trying to figure out, okay, well, one, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Yeah.
I backpacked South America for a bit, did the whole like, eat, pray, love, find yourself.
Yeah.
And then I knew that I didn't want to be in sales, just because, and I mean, no knock to sales, I think it's a wonderful career, but if you're in sales long enough, that's what you're in. Like, it's really hard to you can pivot, but you start very much at the bottom again if it's not a
100%.
sales oriented role, or you're so good at it that you pivot careers, and like, but again, you're still in that sales aspect. And I like sales for the ability to communicate and like, help clients and customers. But I hated the fact that it was like a month by month kind of like fill your pipeline. And then like at the core of it, I know people are going to disagree with it, but there's a transaction to it where you do build relationships, and of course you are there, but that's secondary to the goal of being able to provide a service or a product. And maybe that's why I wasn't a great salesperson. Like why I didn't, want to stay a salesperson, or even again, I got fired. So great salesperson, why maybe like that was my perception of it. But long story short, I knew that I really liked interacting with people, but I didn't want a product or a service to have to be the end goal. And I really liked a little bit of the mental kind of like dialogue that you'd have when my previous role, which was an analyst at TD Bank. But I also wanted to kind of continue working in the tech space. So, or at least actually work in the tech space that I considered core technology. I found consulting, like when I was reading, I had no idea what it was. So I literally scoured LinkedIn for anybody that I knew that was in the practice in consulting. Found honestly one of the biggest sweethearts, Megan's Sweet, who I went to university with, who worked at KPMG at the time. She was gracious enough to kind of, take 30 minutes, 45 minutes, tell me what she did, tell me what it's all about. And then I went on a spree of, reading material, reaching out to old profs that worked in consulting. An old friend of mine worked at Deloitte. She was in a risk advisory practice. So I let her know that I was looking for it. She put me in touch with her manager. And over about I would say a 12-month process, I interviewed with Deloitte across their advisory practice, their audit practice, and eventually within their consulting practice, and then got a job there in their Oracle Consulting, which is like a ERP system. Yeah. And that was the beginning of, I would say, the second half of my first half of my career. And I just kind of slowly found that I loved strategy, just like strategy consulting, but just the nature of it, kind of like new projects, every client, it's like fast paced, no 2 days are the same. And you're constantly being asked to learn new things and then quickly pivot to, relate to clients.
You thrive on that.
Oh, I love chaos. I feel more comfortable in chaos. And then I found, oddly enough, one of the partners was talking about something called RPA, robotic process automation. I was just like, what is this? So he sent me some material. Cool. I started reading it, and I was like, this is it. Did a bunch of work to get into our RPA practice. I met some great leaders, I want to hear this, not Satish Alita, who's still a good friend of mine, Jackson. started working for that practice, and I kind of fell in love with the idea of like technology and automation, and as I went further down the rabbit hole, I learned more and more about like deep tech, so RPA, which was like kind of the baseline, and then you get into like character recognition, and then eventually I found my way into the AI space. And after pivoting over to Omnia's AI practice, I was like, I kind of wanted to go full tilt, and I decided to go do a master's in AI over at Queen's, and moved over to IBM to work with a great partner, Andrew, and kind of help spin up or help establish a data and AI strategy practice. And most recently, I ended up getting an offer to go work at MIT IBM Research Lab in Cambridge. So it's kind of slowly trickling my way more and more towards like foundational core AI development and product. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, because 5 years ago, if you told me I'd be in this space with this type of credential, I would be like, well, I don't even know what any of this is. So
and it's interesting, like people tell you to dream big and figure out what you want, start visualizing it, but it's like if you can't even conceptualize what that is, like what you're doing now, you didn't even know what that was 5-6 years ago, but you just almost like kept like following the path, being like, and almost like followed your curiosity. Like, I like learning about this. I like strategizing about this. I like teaching clients this and consulting on this. Okay. But I also like this, and I like this, and I like this. And you just kept going and going and going. Do you think consulting was the first time you had an interest in your career?
No, I've always so my first job, I had a massive interest in my career.
Okay.
It didn't dissipate. And then the second job, I had a massive career. Every job I've had, like the reason I was successful at the beginning of each of my careers is because I had a massive interest. But as soon as it tailed off, my ability to be good at that tailed off. Consulting
so basically, you get really good at it, and then you're kind of like, okay, check.
Yeah, I get bored.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I get good enough at it where I can learn the system, and I'm like, well, there's nothing here outside of like a system that you have to like plug and play. And then I get bored because I'm like, well, that doesn't take any novelty. What consulting did for me was it's like an infinite game.
Yeah.
And you can pivot and you can move. And what I love in this new space, kind of further into AI, is like it's so new that nobody knows what's going on, and there's this weird conception in the public where AI is like we're at this certain spot, when really we're so juvenile right now. And the idea of like a sentient being is like just around the corner. It's like if people really knew how really nothing in the commercial market is AI, like truly AI. And like the teams that, are doing AI productation or AI commercialization, we're still very much at like I won't say at the immaturity stage, but we're still trying to figure out how to do some of these complex things that can be pushed into like mass scale production. And like being a part of that means that no 2 days are the same, but two, you're kind of creating the new, or you're helping create the new, put it that way. Maybe not creating it, but you're helping create the new, and you're figuring out as you go along. Like there's no template. There's no, this is how you do it. There's a framework for how software development is done or AI deployment. But for this particular use case or what have you, it's like, shit, let's go figure it out, guys, because no one here has the answer.
Would you compare this to the .com bubble?
No, only because the .com, but one, the markets are completely different between the .com bubble and right now. I think
more so like we're at the very, very, very beginning of what this could be.
So the only reason I wouldn't compare it to the .com bubble, and I just want to preface, I'm not a expert in this in terms of
no problem
in terms of market or what have you, but the .com bubble was kind of, I think it was pushed, like I think core AI is still an academic race.
Okay.
Where like core AI products is still very much an academic practice, where the .com bubble was, I think it was a lot more commercial, where you had, gobs of money being poured into organizations with like no due diligence. And I think you did have that here, but I think it was a little bit more steadfast and established in certain products or in certain services as well. So I wouldn't necessarily, it's the same. Also, this is not the first AI boom that we've had.
God, no.
Yeah, there's been.
And for someone who's so lost right now, even just hearing the word AI, give some day-to-day examples of how AI is used that we use today.
I would say some of the most ubiquitous one would probably just be like a voice activated, like a Siri or a Google Home, just where your typical AI assistant. There's some really cool AI products that are now hitting the market to support copywriting, and like, artists are, a lot of artists are now
The copywriting ones are so cool.
They're amazing. I'm not going to lie. But last night I was reading an article how AI is really revolutionizing what we do in terms of art and, and in marketing as well, where you can have voice activated drawings where you can dictate or you can type out what you want to see.
Oh.
And it'll actually generate the picture for you. You can amend it as you see fit. And it also has, I'll send it to you after this. There's also video editing AI where it actually creates the video for you. So let's say fall park scene, and then it'll just generate a fall park scene, and then it'll generate a video through what a fall park scene should look like. And as it's going, you can type text into it. You can add certain features, remove certain features, add music, add individuals. So I personally think it's like, one, it's really, really cool. Like I've even written emails using, Write, RYTE. That's like a copyright generator where just to kind of see what you would get out of it. It's phenomenal. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very
I mean,
cool.
Grammarly's I wouldn't say it's probably a AI, I guess you can call it AI tool as well. Well, it's just like syntax analysis to better understand, how people are writing, the context in which you're writing, who the audience is. So it's pretty neat.
What industry are you most excited that AI will disrupt?
What industry am I most excited that AI will disrupt? I think just because of the most recent backlog, I think supply chain is ripe for AI disruption. There's a couple ways. I think one would just be efficient route management. So, or smart contracts. So let's say you have a shipping container that needs to go from Guatemala to, Texas. You can actually implement, it's called sensors on these things. So every port that it goes through, it can automatically be tagged, reference, and then once it goes out, it's all logged accordingly. And then based on that route, let's say you recognize that it's automatically take through, so you don't have to go through the shipping, like the manual shipping practices and like documentation and what have you. You can also figure out, okay, if based on that route, and that time of year and any sort of obstructions that might be in that supply chain, what would be a more efficient supply chain going forward through an analysis of, what have you, like certain directions but so I think shipping supply chain is going to be a really big. It's also drones, like drone technology to support supply chains as well. So I think I think supply chain is ripe for revolution. And then the costs associated with it are so high as well.
But now your job in particular, what types of projects and strategy are you creating and for who?
So my
current
just
very
role,
university kind of established through MIT.
So I don't start that gig till January.
Okay.
But my current role at IBM is I do like AI and data strategy for private sector and public sector clients. But I think the core of it is just a lot of organizations, they want to do AI, but the base of AI is really on how do we use your data and use your data at a stage where it's mature enough for us to enable AI. You can't just plug AI in and then you have AI. It's really dependent on what data you have in-house, the cleanliness of that data, the quality, the organization. Is it the right data? So what we do a lot of, what my focus is really AI and analytics, but from the basis of how do we get your data to the point of being able to utilize. So that's through data strategy, governance strategy. So do we have the right tools, technologies that you guys are using right now so that you can have clean data? And if you don't, how do we put a strategy in so that you can implement it? And then once you implement it, how do you manage it going forward? What are the policies and procedures and practices you want to have around your data so that, let's say we do it with one particular organization, but you have 17 departments. How do we make sure all 17 departments are on the same track? And then once we get to that future state where your data is clean, what type of machine learning ops do we want to put on top of there to enable AI for the future? Or, it could be a number of different things, but I would say the core of it, I would say 80% of it right now is how do we get your data to the point where AI is actually something you can handle? And then once we get there, then we'll actually do AI. And that's what I mean, kind of my earlier point, a lot of organizations kind of hear AI colloquially everywhere. Everything is AI. It's really not.
Like big data. Remember that term that was so overused?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really not, it's not as mass as people think it is. it's really a marketing term, to be honest. AI is very
Don't I
much a
know it?
marketing term. So exactly. So that's and I really love it too, because you get to see organizations take that first step in like, okay, how do we enable the future state? But it's also really difficult for these like, very mature organizations to
To
shift.
do anything.
It's tough though. Like, I used to be a little bit, I guess, on my pedestal where it's like, you don't do this, you don't do that. But then you kind of see how the engine operates. And there's just an organization of, 2,000 to 10,000 people. Shifts take time and there's politics involved, and, it's big dollars, and you got to be able to have an ROI within a certain amount of time. So it's just a matter of getting the story of like, okay, why are we doing this? Why is it important? And then carving off the pieces that are important and the things that are nice to have. Let's develop a prioritization so we get the right people happy, or we get the right things in place. And then once we've seen success, let's get everybody else on board. But now we have the story of, look, we've done this, or we've been able to provide you with this. So why don't we go for the next piece of pie? I think, and that's what I've learned.
Hand over some more dollars. Let's start doing more.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything costs money, man. There's no such
Yes.
thing as a free lunch.
No, there's not. A question that I want to pivot to a little bit. You've moved a lot for your job and for your career and whatnot. Like, change is not scary to you at all. However, you do say you do have a fear of failure. Sometimes those are interlinked, but for you, they're very separate. So what has happened in your life, you can link back to what we've already talked about, that has made you afraid of failure. And even though you've overcome them, like, why are you still afraid of future failure? Like, where's the theme? Where's like, what's deep rooted there?
What's the fear? That's a good question. I think it comes down to just like expectation. I'm the only son. Like, I'm like
okay.
Like,
so do you think it's your parents' expectation or the
yes
expectation
and no.
you put on yourself?
Yeah. Like, I don't like, I generally, like, I know that my parents, like, if I stopped right now, my parents would be more than happy. They would be overjoyed. And
you seem like you come from a great family.
they're good. They're good. Like, I love my mom. I love my dad. They're good people.
Yeah.
They've built a life for us that, off of nothing. So I genuinely really appreciate that. I think the fear of failure is just more so, it's self-induced, to be honest. It's like, I would say I've got a complex in terms of like, I think I'm better than everybody else, but I also think I'm shittier than everybody else, So it's like, it's just, so because
I was talking to a new friend of mine recently, and he basically said that word for word yesterday. So dive deeper into that, because I want to learn more.
Yeah, so it's like, I think I'm better than everybody else. And it's not like, it's not that I don't think less of everybody.
No. I get it.
Yeah. So I think I'm better than else in terms of like, I have a capacity to do
And skill
more.
level.
Yeah. Like, not even skill, because I don't necessarily think I'm very skilled. I just think I'm capable of doing a lot. Okay. Like, I think my threshold is higher than everybody else's threshold. And I think that comes from sports. Okay. Like, I found a lot of success when I was a younger athlete. When I say
I've heard this about you.
Oh, okay.
I've been told this, that you were one of the best.
Yeah, I was,
if not the.
At the one point in time, I was, and I mean, I hate saying this because it was so long ago, but like, I think at the height of like my basketball career, I was at the national tournament. We had won third. We had just lost to, I want to say, no, we had just beat Alberta or what have you. But long story short, I got first team all-star, which means you were top 5 in the tournament. And then I got put on the watch list for Junior Team Canada.
Which is crazy.
Again, whether it would have happened or not, it doesn't matter. Like, but like in my mind, I was like, I knew at that point in time that I was a really good athlete. And then I blew my knee. And then I just never really made it back to that spot. But I didn't really care after grade 12. Like, I wasn't basketball. Okay. I put that on the side burner. I just realized it was no longer going to be my thing.
But you played in university, right?
Yeah, but I by no means was I like. But
you're like, okay, the perspective of this career is no more.
Yeah, like the idea of what I thought I was going to do was just like, but because I was lucky enough to play at that high level, and like growing up, I was always, drilled into me like dedication, work ethic. And my grade 8 coach, my grade 7, 8, 9 coach, who is one of the biggest like mentors in my life to this day. Like, he was always one of those people where he drilled into me, like, whatever you think you can do more. And then even my coaches, whatever you think you can do more. I always felt like they always like not picked on me in like a bad way, but just like, they saw more than I did, so they always pushed me.
Mm.
I think now as an adult, I never saw it back then, but now I've got the same voice in my head.
Yeah.
So when I say I think I'm better, it's just like I know my capacity. Like as soon as I think I reach an edge, I know I've got a little bit more.
Mm.
So I say all that to say this. That voice is kind of what if I don't? And on the other side, it's the exact opposite, where it's like we didn't have a ton growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you grow up with like nothing's wrong with not having a lot when you grow up, but the worst is when you don't have a lot, and then you're around people who do. It just makes it feel so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of just like I think I'm worse than everybody, like shittier than everybody else. It's that dichotomy where it's like the part of me that goes 1,000 miles an hour and really has no quit. That's that Abraham. But that same 13-year-old Abraham is the part that is dealing with that other mental block. So
how do you find the healthy level in the middle where you still have that fuel to allow you to have that dedication and work ethic and get up in the morning and not lean into cockiness, but also, like something in the middle from like the self-loathing and self-deprecation?
So I don't really have the self-deprecation. So it's not so much a self-deprecation.
It's more just that fear of like, I know I can get here. Yeah. The fear is I could get here. Like, where do you find something in the middle that you can slowly build up to where you can be? And you know what I mean? And not like keep yo-yoing back and forth.
So I don't yo-yo anymore.
Okay.
So I think this was a battle that I would say 26 to 30-year-old Abraham had. Okay. Now I sit on the side.
More balanced?
Now it's almost like nihilistic. I realize that none of this matters. So why there's really no reason to think one thing or the other. But the way I did it was just more so, it's like somebody has to be in a specific role. Somebody has to get a certain job. So why not you? It's just like, why not you? And I think every time I've had that mentality where you just go for something, and I've like I said, I've failed at quite a few things where I haven't gotten the gig, or maybe somebody told me that I wasn't smart enough, and then that becomes fuel for something else. I think it just comes back to like, well, why not? And it's not, if something doesn't go wrong, the nihilistic parts come in, where it's like, none of this really matters in the end. Like I'm not saving the world. And even if I am, in 10,000 years, it's all going to be dust. So I think it comes from like realizing that I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's a big deal to me and me alone, and nobody else cares. Like genuinely nobody cares. So like, why are you stressing about it? And the other thing is like the balancing act comes from realizing that none of it matters. So you might as well go as hard as you can, because if you do get it, at least, you can live with it. And if you don't, then none of it matters. So what is it like, so it's, I think that's the balance that I have right now. It's not the self-loathing piece, although I think every now and then I'll open that, like I compartmentalize everything. So I'll open that door if I need a little bit of fuel. Let's say it's 2 a.m. and I need to get something out the door, then I'll close it.
I love that.
Oh yeah. But for the most part now, it's
like a lever. Like a lever you can pull.
It is. I compartmentalize everything. Like I've got like 16 doors in my head that like, if I need a certain type of motivation, I open that up. And sometimes it's self-loathing. Sometimes it's unbridled rage. Sometimes it's the cocky 13-year-old Abraham. And it's just like, whatever I need to tap into, like I find a way to kind of like tap into that feeling. I found balance in that more so than anything else.
I resonate a lot with what you're saying, where it's funny internally in your mind when you know that you are and you can be super ambitious and you want a lot for yourself, but then you also have this other part of you where none of it matters. And I find myself going back and forth between those throughout the day.
So what I always ask myself,
it makes you a little bit, I find the part where I remember none of this matters, it allows me to have a lot more flow and ease in my day. And not be affected or react to anything.
That's it. So I use none of it matters when I start to get wrapped up in other people. So I use none of it matters when it's external things.
Yes.
But when I use I want this, it's very much like, that's when I compartmentalize. I open up the different doors.
Yeah.
But if I start to get wrapped up in, somebody else just got this job or somebody else just got profiled. And I mean, I'm human. So obviously I get wrapped up in it every now and then.
And there's still competition.
I use it for external competition where it's like, none of it matters. Like nobody cares. It's all bullshit in the end. And then when it's internal, where it's like something that I want to do, then I utilize whatever emotional trigger that I need, whether it's It's true. Like, it's like I literally use every emotional trigger in the book, whether it's anything from like, I fucking hate this person, or I've got like 5 people that have said something to me over my lifetime and I've never forgotten it. I kid you not.
Hey, use it for what you need it for.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of people listening to this that have all the same wounds as you, but I love that you use them as fuel. A lot of
Yeah.
people use those wounds as a roadblock.
So again, I'm very fortunate in terms of like the people that I had around me growing up. Like I said, I'll shout out to fucking Ralph Backay, who is I met him when I was in grade 7. He was my basketball coach from grade 7 through grade 9. I was a shy, timid, chubby kid when I met him. And like, he fucking
Saw something in you.
I don't know what I think he just saw like the cocky, like, little insecure kid. And he just,
Right.
we've bonded over the fact that I loved basketball and I was, starting to become decently talented at it. And he was my coach at the time. To his credit, he's a phenomenal human being. But like, I think between him and then I credit all of this to the coaches that I've had growing up.
Yeah.
Of course, my parents too, but the coaches I've had growing up, there was no such thing as being sorry for yourself. And like, I've just like maintained that to the nth degree, where it's just like, so what? Like, yeah, it's life sucks. It's so what?
Trust me, this is my mantras every single day. Trust me.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't, like, other people can get away, but like, don't get, like, there's enough shit in the world where like you don't have to get in your own way. The world will give you enough.
Yes. Don't I know it?
Right.
Okay, last topic before I let you go. When I met you about a year and a half ago, I feel like just the nature of like reading your energy and just like some of the stuff you were telling me when we were like chatting about our personal lives, you were so closed off from the idea of a relationship. Like, so closed off. I think back, like we were literally in this apartment that you're here right now, like on the balcony, and I was like asking you questions and you were so closed off. It was laughable. What the hell changed?
What did before I answer that, what gave you that perception?
Oh my God, your energy was just so funny. Like, because I think, I don't remember the questions. I don't even remember like word for word, but I just remember like you just had such set views on relationships and dating. And I think you were just in a mindset of like, I just moved to Toronto. I don't need to be wasting my time like dating. Like, I'm here for my career, blah, 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 new apartment, blah. And then all of a sudden, like, at what point did you become emotionally available and how? Is it just a decision?
No, I wouldn't. I'd be the first to admit that I'm still like, whatever view, I haven't changed any views on relationships that I've had
Okay.
over the last
So
year
do you
and a
feel
half.
like my impression is completely wrong?
I wouldn't say it's completely wrong. I
Okay.
would say that when we first met, I knew you were opening up the magnifying glass.
I tend to do that.
Yeah. So
So
it's
then you were
funny.
like, my walls are going up. This girl wants to know things about me.
I've when people put the magnifying glass on, I'm really good at just like shining it. Like, I can be whatever you want, like whatever I
Fair.
want to be at that point in time.
That's
It's
a good
yeah,
skill.
just because like as soon as the magnifying glass, I'm like, no, this is organic. I don't trust this. So I'm
Fair. I'll take that as
gonna,
feedback.
yeah.
Okay. But then even just like thinking about dating in your 30s, obviously you went through breakups in the past. Obviously you've lived with partners and whatnot. What advice or what just like other parts of your life helped you and changed you in order to have a successful relationship this time?
Oh man.
Or how did you change in order to have like what I view as you guys being in a successful relationship?
I genuinely don't think I've changed.
Okay.
I don't like, I mean, I think I'm literally the exact same person. I've just
Interesting.
found somebody that fits that that fits that scope.
And I think that's even a better lens to look at it, because a lot of people, when they're in the dating world, they think they need to be changing all the time. Oh,
Yeah.
that person didn't like me. So, okay, maybe I'll fix this. Maybe I'll edit this about myself. But what you're saying is don't change and they'll find you.
No. I didn't change for anybody. Like, relationships, you kind of figure out, like, I've had a couple before me and Alia started dating in Toronto, where you kind of go through the process of kind of wondering why that didn't work out.
Yeah.
What's so funny?
Just dating in Toronto.
And here's another thing. I find that everybody talks about dating like it's a job. I never found dating work.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I never dated to marry or dated to find a girlfriend. I dated to enjoy the person. So if I didn't enjoy the person, then I just stopped dating them, and I didn't think of it in terms of like, oh fuck, I gotta go another one.
Ah.
Yes.
This is gonna be groundbreaking for a lot of people right now.
Well, just like, yeah, what's the point of dating? Like, because you bring that shit energy in, and then another thing you do is like you dump whatever you want on the other person, when really all you really should be doing to know is like, do I fucking vibe? Like, do I not vibe with this person, but like when I'm who I am, do I like enjoy being around this person or vice versa? And I always found like the first, like, I mean, I never had a bad date. Just from the sake of like, I'm not there to find anything or look for anything. And it's like, I thought you were cool, so I was gonna go chop it up. I may be nervous or what have you, but even then it's like, yeah. So when me and Alia started dating, like I think off the bat, we just had a first date, we just had a really good time.
Okay.
And then after that, I'm like, okay, I think she's cool.
You're like, let's go have a good time again and again.
But that's exactly what it was. And then eventually you find out that, like, you know, with me and her, you know, I found that, like, you know, I not only do I have a good time with her, but I genuinely care about her. And like, I know so that just turned into something to what it is, like turned into what it is now. But she'll be the first to admit, like, I wouldn't say I'm stuck in my ways, but like I am a pretty specific individual.
But that's what she loves.
I guess so, man. She's still here. So I'm a specific individual. So I always just found that, like, I'm not gonna, if I am gonna change, it's gonna be like things that are not part of, like, not core to who I am. Just for the sake of a relationship, put the toilet seat down, yada, 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 you know? But the core of what you are, like, I don't think you should shift that out, I think. But
unless you want to, like, for yourself.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, unless you find. I also think that, like, it's a big thing where it's like there's this weird, again, if you're dating over 30, I always find there's this narrative around it where you're like, I want to say you're searching for something, you're trying to like find something. It's just like, that's all dog shit. Like this. It is. Just go have fun.
I don't disagree. I'm just laughing at hearing someone say the same kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's true. Like, you know, like, why don't, like, the worst case scenario if you go on a date and all you're trying to do is like see if you like have fun with the person is you don't have fun with the person.
And you just don't talk to them again.
Yeah. So I would say that's and she's, to her credit, she's an absolutely fucking wonderful human being. Like, she's beautiful inside and out. So that obviously made it a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. Okay, let's start closing it up. After everything, you've kind of touched on this throughout the entire time, but to chalk it up after everything that you've kind of went through, the ebbs, the flows, the everything that you've went through in the past, let's say 6 years, can you tell me that you wouldn't be who you are today without all of that happening? And what are you so grateful for that it had to happen?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
And all of it had to, hey?
Every single one of those things had to happen, yeah.
For you to be where you are today and have the wisdom and knowledge and, I guess, gratitude.
So I would say everything one of those happened, whether it's for me here today, every one of those things had to happen for me to kind of get the perspective to go wherever it is that I'd like to go. So yeah, the perspective that provided me, and just like the humility, I think for sure that had to happen.
Humility is key. That's the biggest probably one that I gain when I've been like laid off and fired is humility. You're not as great as you think you are anymore. You're just like the rest of us.
That's exactly it.
I hate it, that realization.
You know what? Better now. What I said, better at that age. You know, I mean, nothing really mattered. Like, I was early part of my career, you could fail as much as you want. That's what I'm really grateful for to happen that point too, so I could, like, you know, pick myself back up and kind of figure it out on the back half. Like, because some people happen at 40, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, but like, I think just harder. The mental, that's exactly, you know, you have, like, you may have a family, you may have certain obligations where you can't just, like, I was able to go figure shit out without any sort of obligations to anyone. And that's what I'm super grateful to. It happened at a point in time in my life where I could truly absorb it and like learn from it.
Last but not least, answer this however you want, whether anyone that's listening right now that have gone through what you've also gone through or is going through it now, either what's some advice or encouragement that you would give them, or as another way to ask this question, What's a mantra that you live day to day that gets you through any tough time?
Ooh, what's a mantra or something like that? That's a great question.
Or any encouragement?
Yeah.
The encouragement that you would have wanted to hear when you were going through it.
So I'm bad with encouragement. The more people encourage me, the more I hate like soft talk.
It feels
Like,
cringy.
it's just so like, yeah, Alia will like, she'll, for any time she says something that's like, you could, it's just like, oh, please. But what I would say is my mantra. I don't know what my mantra would be, but whatever it would be, it'd probably Marcus Aurelius. Like I'm a huge, like I love stoicism in terms of like, I would say my mantra would be winning and losing is the same thing. It's really everybody else. It's how people treat you that makes the difference. Like there's no difference between winning and losing. It's really just the outside world that treats you differently.
I'm making you dive deeper. I feel like I feel different when I win or lose, but it's because
Because of the yeah. So for instance, if I say something to you in Spanish, do you speak Spanish?
A little bit.
Okay,
Cerveza. Te amo.
If I say something to you
Buenos
in a
dias.
so you're fluent, is what you're trying to tell me.
I know what I need to know.
It's like that. It's for me, it's the idea that like if winning doesn't give you winning, or like winning doesn't provide you like the whatever empty, like let's say you have an emptiness or what have you, winning doesn't fill that hole, and losing is not going to like make it deeper. It's you're left with, it's just the outside world that treats you differently, that makes you feel you're either better or worse. So it's the idea like just when you do something, don't necessarily do it for any sort of external reasons, because if you do, as soon as people treat you differently, you're going to fall victim to whatever that external reason is.
Yep. And then we can link it all the way back to how we started. Then you start linking your identity to it all.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a quote from a movie I watched when I was like, gosh, would have been like 15 years old, 16 years old. And I always loved it. That and there's no such thing as curses.
That's an interesting one as well. I like that. Cool. Well, Abe, thank you so much for coming on. I remember when we saw each other at the wedding, you're like, when am I coming on the pod? Then I kind of just like laughed you off. And I was like, you're always invited, because everyone always says that to me, but like no one actually jumps on it. Literally, we got back from the wedding, you text me, and you're like, yeah, so how do I book it? And I was like, yeah, let's go. This is going to be a great episode. And obviously we have a lot of mutual friends. So I know I've already pre-told everyone that it's happening. So I know they're excited. And I just think a lot of our conversations, as with many of the conversations on this podcast, but I feel like this one is so relatable to a point where majority of people our age have been laid off or fired, have went through breakups, are moving, changing careers, feeling like they don't have any passions in life. And so I feel like a lot of the advice and the stories you've told are going to be well received. So thank you.
Hey, I hope so. Appreciate you letting me be on the podcast. It was great.
There's no letting. Like I said, always welcome, but thank you.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.